Way back in 2010, I found myself in a relationship with a gal who had some health issues going on. So, because of her health, we didn't get out of the apartment very often. So, I took the initiative to ask her about things that we could do because staying inside and spending time together, watching movies was kind of just becoming the norm. And so I asked her, "Hey, do you remember those games that you ever saw as a kid where they're really expensive and they come with a bunch of pieces like tanks and miniatures and stuff like that? Maybe we could do something like that because I happen to know the person that I was with was really into games and puzzles and things like that. So I took the initiative to find some games. So I went to the internet, I went to YouTube, and I tried to find a pretty complicated game. We had discussed something not like Uno or Monopoly, but like something new and thematic and neat. And what I came across on YouTube, I don't know exactly how because it was so long ago, and I was flipping through quite a few different channels and videos, but I came across a board game called Arkham Horror. Arkham Horror is a pretty complex, long, cooperative game set in the H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu universe. It takes place in Arkham, Massachusetts, which is a fictional town that doesn't exist in his writing. And in the game, players are taking on investigators trying to solve something wicked and mysterious and trying to stop what they call an ancient one, which is basically just a giant monster from breaking into our world because they live in different worlds and stuff, kind of like a Stranger Things kind of thing. And so that's what we did. I picked up a copy of it. I ordered it. It wasn't cheap, and my partner and I played the snot out of it. I mean, she just loved it, and I loved being with her and playing it. We played through all the ancient ones to the point to where we went online and we looked at pictures of some of the ancient ones from expansions that we didn't have, and we wrote them down. We wrote the stats down from the pictures so that we could play against those. We loved it. Um, Things didn't stay with us, but one thing that did stay was Arkham Horror. I've always loved that game. In fact, when I tell my story every now and again of how I got into board games, that is the story. That is the first game that I ever bought. That was a game. Again, not like a Uno or a Clue or anything like that, but an actual gamer's game. It was Arkham Horror 2010. 10 years. 10 years ago. I've been a serious gamer for about 10 years. And I've always loved Fantasy Flight's games. They're a board game company in Minnesota that has the rights for all the Arkham stuff. And so they've put out a bunch of games that revolve around the Cthulhu world. Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, Elder Sign, lots of expansions, lots and lots of expansions for all these games. I always loved them, but I've never loved them. I guess I like playing them. Arkham Horror, the board game. Gosh, I couldn't. I think it's been over a year since the last time I've even opened up that thing. And I ended up this year gifting it to a friend of mine, kid named Kevin, who wanted the game, and so I just passed it on, and so I don't even have a copy of it anymore. And so, yeah, that brings me to the game that I want to talk about in this video. And so, having said that, having told you that Arkham Horror, those games, the games that got me into this heavy tabletop gaming, this hobby, and how I've kind of followed them, they all pale in comparison to the one that I'm talking about today. I don't play the other ones nearly as much. Elder Sign, I played the snot out of that, and it's ran its course. It is what it is. Eldritch Horror, I've played probably one or two, three times, and I still do enjoy it and would like to play it again someday before I die, but I'm not super into it. A game that I am super into, oh, excuse me, is Arkham Horror, the card game. Now, what's the difference? Okay, so it's a card game. It's not on a board, doesn't involve dice. It's a deck building game where you're going to be taking characters and building a deck for them. So, why do I like this game so much? So, I want to talk about two aspects. The first aspect I want to talk about is the gameplay a little bit, as far as like how the game is set up, and then of course the second part is the narrative part. And so let's start with the first one. So the gameplay wise, every box and stuff, they have different campaigns, which I'll talk about more when I get into the narrative aspect of the game. But what you do is you very akin to, it's basically kind of like a marriage of like a Dungeons and Dragons, like where you create a character, you create a role, you level up, you gain experience in this game, and a cooperative card game. It's just like all the other Arkham games; they've all been cooperative. And so with Arkham Horror, the card game, the LCG is what they call it, a living card game. You create a character at the beginning of a campaign by creating a deck that is specific to that character, as far as, when I say specific, as far as like the amount of cards that they can have in it and the types of cards they can have, like from different factions. And so you basically are creating a character. What do you want your character to be like? Do you want them to be fast? Do you want them to be more combat heavy? Do you want them to be able to do certain skills better than others and stuff like that? So you get to customize your character. And as you play through the campaigns, which again I'll talk about later, you get experience, which means you can take a card out and put in the leveled up version of that card. So I might have a crummy revolver that only, it jams up on me half the time, but with experience I can learn how to clean that revolver, and then I get the upgraded card to add into my deck that is nice and cleaned and polished, and it doesn't jam up on me, so at least it works most of the time. Something like that. So you start getting better as you play in the game. The gameplay is admittedly quite complex. Now, I say that trying to be completely objective because, let me tell you what, I own everything for this game. Everything that's come out, from the promos to whatnot. I've played a lot of hours. Logged a lot of hours playing Arkham Horror, the card game. So to me, the rules and the structure it's kind of just rinse and repeat. Like, I know what to do and I know how to react in certain situations. But being objective, the game is kind of tough to learn. And some cards are written differently. Does that apply in this situation, or does that not, or things like that. So it is a pretty complex game to get into, but once you get to where I'm at, where you and your fellow players or your partner or whatever can get the flow of the game, it's totally fun to play, and it's doable. And so you create a character and you go through a story. The stories come out in campaigns. So I'm going to show you some. This is the newest one I haven't even gotten into yet, but of course I bought it, called the Dream Eaters. And so the campaigns come out in these, first they come out in these big boxes, what they call a big box. The Dream Eaters. They come out in the big boxes, and so you buy this and you get a whole bunch of player cards, and then you also get the story to it, and it's the first two of the campaign. Then they come out with these individual scenarios that look something like this. These little packs, and this is a scenario. This one's called The Search for Kadath, and this is basically a mini movie is in here, like a little part of a movie, an episode. One of the episodes of a show is in here, and this is the first. It's not the first episode. The first two are in this one, and then here's like the third episode. So you create a character, you go through this story, you level them up, you fight monsters, you come across people, you fight people. There's witches, there's monsters. I mean, it's called Arkham Horror for a reason. It's a horror game. I absolutely love it, which is why I've wanted to make a video about this game for a very, very long time. Just not really sure what exactly I'm going to talk about. So that's the first aspect, is just what is the game? It's a card game. It's kind of a role-playing game in the sense of building up a character and going through a story. You work cooperatively together to beat the scenario, whatever it may be. And the scenarios are always changing because you're, like I said, you're buying new packs. You know, there's a lot of money that goes into this game, but it's very enjoyable if that's what you enjoy. And so we'll talk about the second bullet point now, the narrative structure. And so, as I've already mentioned, they have a bunch of different campaigns. I think there's like 4, I believe. Each campaign is comprised of, let's go with 8 episodes in a campaign. And so you have 8 episodes that make up an entire series or season of some kind of a story. So you have the first episode and the 8th episode, and then you're essentially done, like, with that story. And then you wait for the next one to come out, and then the new story is like, ooh, this one's all about witches and warlocks or something, and that gives you a different. All the campaigns have kind of a different feel to them, whether if they're more in a city with stuff that's going on in a city, or if you're like more in a desert area, or not a desert, but out in like a wooded area, and so they're all different. But the thing about the narrative is that it's kind of like, I'm going to use the term choose your own adventure. It's not essentially like that, but it is based on the fact that the game reacts to what you do. So very akin to video games. They call them like point and click video games, like Telltale games, where you just kind of click, do you save the girl or do you save yourself? Okay, I saved myself, so the girl dies. Well, the game now remembers that you did not save the girl. And because you didn't do that, it's going to do something different in this game because you don't have the girl, as opposed to we saved the girl, and so now here's her card that we get to use and play with for all of our future games. And so that's a very basic idea of what they do with the campaigns. They do a whole lot more because what you do changes your setup, changes how the monsters can work, you know, so each game kind of carries over from episode to episode, changing what you do as far as setup and how the objectives are run. And it might scale the difficulty because last time you took too long to get to the secret hideout, so now there's a whole bunch of monsters there because you took too dang long in your last game, you know, because you didn't do very well, or you did really well, and so your game has changed this way, or this person you were able to capture, and so he's now helping you. So now you have this cool card that you and your friend get to use for all, you know, and he has an ability because you have this guide, but or else maybe last time, no, the snakes got the guide and now he's dead, and so you don't get to use the guide for the rest of your game. So it's his card, he's out, you know. And so the game is very reactive and it's very thematic because, like I said, there's cards that you get to use, cards that you don't get to use, all based on how well that you do. And so it's kind of these little branching narrative paths of setup and gameplay. For example, the biggest one was the Circle Undone, is what the campaign's called. And without spoiling too much, this is a minor spoiler, I guess, there's 2 sides kind of fighting against each other. One is what I would call kind of an Illuminati, like secret hidden society within this town. And the other is like a cult of witches. And these 2 groups are kind of fighting with each other or amongst each other. And at some point in the game, you have to make a decision. Are you going to jump on the witches' side, or are you going to jump on this side, on the Illuminati side, like the secret society? And that's one of the biggest, like, branches. You know, we picked this particular side or this particular side, and so all of our games in the end were all set up with different objectives because we're working over here. And I've never gotten the chance, but I would love to go back and do it and be like, let's do this side and see, because it shows you all these objectives that we didn't have to do and these cards that we didn't get to play with because we weren't doing that side. And so it's very reactive as far as the choices that you make. They matter in the story and they change the story. And it's all within a card game, and it's all fun. It's really, really fun game. To just kind of wrap up the video, to talk a little bit more about some of the minor things of it. So thematic ties are way up there. What you do in the game makes sense in the narrative, or what happens in the narrative makes sense in the gameplay. It makes sense if you're trapped in something that you would not be able to move this round or next round until something, what happens or whatever. And so another thing I want to talk about is the artwork. The artwork in this game is absolutely phenomenal. It's so rich and deep and detailed, and it's just very horrific. It looks, I don't know if this is going to really work, but like some of the cards, the cat's got beady eyes and stuff. I love the artwork. There are quite a few cards in here that I've pulled out that I just go, this is a really good card. And so that really makes the game immersive, seeing these cards and being able to upgrade your deck so that you're changing your character and you're getting better. And so this is a game that I own everything for. I really enjoy. It's called Arkham Horror, the card game. This is the base game that gives you just a couple of scenarios. It's not a full campaign. So if you do what I did and just be like, I'll buy this just to see how it plays, and then get hooked, this is where you would start. Just buy the base game, play a couple of the scenarios that come with the base game, build a character. This is not expensive. This part here is not expensive at all, just to get a feel for how it plays. I really recommend it if you like narrative, like card games, or just card games where you're building combinations. Magic the Gathering is a competitive one, but it has card combos and things that you want to up your skills. I want my person to be better with this particular pistol because it's got my name on it, and things like that. So here's the place to check it out, right here, Arkham Horror, the card game. I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite games.